Erik and myself, we're here to represent the DECT.org project, in which a couple of other people actively participate and to which a large number of people contributed bits and pieces. So the results presented are a community effort, and we just happen to be the people that wanted to give the talk today. I'm particularly happy that we can present this at the same conference where we presented our results on GSM. GSM cell phones, of course, have a lot in common with DECT cordless phones. I assume everybody's aware of what DECT is, right? Cordless phones, in-house communication, but also wireless. The security of both these technologies was designed by almost the same group of people, just a few years apart. So there's a lot that these technologies share, in particular that they're completely outdated with regard to their security. I'm particularly happy that we can present both these stories at the same conference, because we get completely different reactions from the manufacturers or the operators of both these technologies. Where with GSM, we're still fighting with industry over them acknowledging that there are problems. With DECT, we have a much more positive story to tell, where we have engaged with industry and are actively working on improving the security, actively working on the next iteration of the standard. So this is the story to be told today and all the steps leading up to it. As a very brief overall introduction to DECT, as I said, this is a cordless telephony standard meant for you to use at home, but also popular in related applications such as alarm systems, for instance, theft detection systems. It's used for machine automation. It's used for payment terminals. So it's a short-range radio that's used in a lot of areas that could potentially be security-related. It does have a pretty decent range, even though you're only supposed to use it in your house. So if there are security problems, chances are that your neighbors can listen in on your calls. DECT is as a standard, and specifically its security, is newer than GSM, so designed by the same people, but a few years later, with the goal of making this more secure, from what we understand. But let's see if they succeeded in achieving this goal. It is, however, a very widespread technology, not quite as widespread as GSM, but there's hundreds of millions of units probably still in use and still actively pushed, even in new markets. The US just adopted DECT a few years ago. So this is a very popular technology, and we hope that it will become a very secure technology too at some point. With that, let me hand over to Erik, who will walk you through all the technical details of our breaks.
Yeah, my microphone on? Can you hear me? Okay. So, what was the status of DECT security about 1 year ago? 1 year ago, DECT had two proprietary algorithms. The DECT standard authentication algorithm, which is algorithm which is used for pairing of two devices in DECT. So if you buy a new phone like this and you carry it home, then you need to pair your phone to your base station. And for that pairing process, the DSAA algorithm is used. It's also used for potentially neutral authentication at every call. So your phone can prove that it's an authentic phone, and your base station can prove that it's an authentic base station when you establish a new phone call. And it's also used to allocate a session key for every phone call you make. So every phone call you make in DECT can have a different key, a different session key, and the DSA algorithm is used to generate this key. And there's the DECT standard cipher. The DECT standard cipher is used for encryption of phone calls. So if you're using the DECT standard cipher, then you can encrypt your phone call from your phone to your base station. So the error interface in DECT can be encrypted. And besides that, the DECT standard cipher is also used for passive authentication. This means that you just assume if you enable encryption for the link between your phone and your base station, and somebody who hasn't got the right encryption key won't be able to send any useful messages to the phone or the base station. Therefore, it's a kind of passive authentication mechanism. But both algorithms in DECT are optional. So you can implement a DECT device without any of these algorithms, and you have a valid DECT device. So you can just send everything in plain and do no authentication, and it works. And there are also devices on the market which do not use authentication and which do not encrypt. In 2006, some people started looking at DECT, and they were working quite independently. So there were a lot of people working on this. Well, a lot. I think perhaps 2 or 3 people already started looking at DECT in 2006. And in 2007 and 2008, more people started to look at DECT, and they met together at various meetings of the CCC and started to have a mailing list, and this was getting more and more people until the end of 2008, when a lot of work was already done, and we decided to publish our results at the Congress 1 year ago. And the main results this time were that the DECT standard authentication algorithm was completely reversed by looking at a DECT stack for a Windows kernel. So there are devices sold for Windows machines where you can use DECT to communicate with a Windows PC, and you could reverse engineer the algorithm from these devices. The DECT standard cipher was partially reverse engineered, so we were able to gather some information about the DECT standard cipher, but we did not fully reverse engineer the cipher. There were some news out that the DECT standard cipher had been completely reverse engineered at the end of 2008, but these news were wrong, and the DECT standard cipher wasn't known to us completely at the end of 2008. Also, we found a lot of attacks on the DECT standard authentication algorithm on the random number generators used in these devices. If you have a bad random number generator on a DECT device, your security will most probably completely fail, break. And also we found some problems in DECT itself and the protocol, and also in a lot of implementations. And also some people wrote an open source driver for a DECT PCMCA card, which allows you to use this card as a protocol analyzer for DECT, so you can sniff DECT data traffic between a phone and a base station completely, and write that to your hard disk and analyze it later, or if it's unencrypted, just play back the audio streams in these communications.
Yeah, back then we already had 2 very strong indications that there must be something wrong with the encryption used in DECT. The one indication we find in a lot of systems is we can't review what they are doing. The standard is closed and proprietary, so some smart engineers thought they came up with a great encryption standard and don't have to share it with the public for public review. That to a cryptographer is almost a guarantee that the crypto isn't as strong as it claims to be. The second indication back then, which we found through the weak random numbers, was that really no review was done on the actual implementation. While the standard, of course, called for good random numbers, none of the handsets actually implemented that, but rather used counters or something that could get away in a unit test as a randomness, but not if any reviewer would actually